welcome to Art and Online, day 3. This is our first video of the morning, so video 1 of the day, but video 7 in total. You may notice that I'm on my own today, and the reason for that is that COVID has done its thing and me and Emily are not allowed to sit next to each other today, so we're going to do the videos in a slightly different way, and I'm going to introduce the first 6 artists in this video, and then by the powers of modern technology we're going to move to Emily and she's going to talk about the following 6. So we're going to kick off today with 2 jewellers who work together. They're a couple, Debbie and Ian, and they go under the name Moxon and Sim. So we can see from this image that the colours that are coming up out of the metal, actually they're a way of actually colouring the metal itself. And Debbie has specialised in this over the last 40 years. And that's how these really beautiful colours are coming up out of the metal. Blues, yellows, greens, purples, oranges. They're using precious metals, gemstones, they use geological samples, they use semi-precious stone slices, and they also create wall art as well as jewellery. And next we're going to talk about a jeweller, another jeweller, whose work is very different, and that's what's so lovely about doing these videos, is just seeing that even though it might be that they work in the same medium, actually what they create and their way of looking at things is so different. So Natalie is very much inspired by construction materials, so much so that she actually uses those construction materials in her pieces. So Natalie makes her jewellery using classic silversmith techniques, but she has this passion for line and form, which can really be seen in these pieces. She's also interested in the material processes. So these pieces here, I love the way that it looks like it's like a slice of something that's been sort of set in, but actually these are pieces that she's specifically made. These are slices that she's created. So each piece absolutely unique. So that's Natalie Baker. We move on now to Neil Crampton, who is a furniture designer. And Neil really allows the clean lines and forms that we saw in Natalie's work. Actually, he's got a similar aesthetic in the way that he looks at his furniture. So it looks really simple, but actually that's why it's so clever. Because to make something look so simple when you're working with timber, having these curves, these lines in, is actually quite a difficult process, but that's the beauty of the work. One of the things that I really love about Neil's pieces is he says his aim is to create pieces of furniture with an integrity that will outlast current fashions. And that's so beautiful. I love the idea that these pieces are made to stay. They're made to be passed on. They're made to be pieces that will be well loved. So now we move on to artist, printmaker and illustrator Nell Smith. She's inspired by the natural world. And to be honest, a lot of artists are inspired by the natural world. But what stands out about Nell's work is the simplicity of line again. We've got something really clean, the way that she looks at the marks that she's making, the way that she uses colour one set against the other. There's such a lot of space in her work as well. And for me, that's a really relaxing thing. I really enjoy work that has spaces in it. So we move on now to jeweller and metalsmith Nettie Birch. Nettie uses copper and aluminium to create her jewellery and vessels. She uses a combination of techniques, modern contemporary techniques like fold forming, and she also uses a much older skill of hand raising to create these vessels. There's also some really interesting use of colour. So you can see in the blackness of some of the pots, and also in this really startling green, and then the kind of coppery goldy colour inside that you can see in these vessels here. So really beautiful way that she uses the materials and the techniques to make her tableware. So the final artist that I'm speaking about in this video is Olivier Leger. Now, it's quite difficult to really understand Olivier's work without understanding the scale of the pieces that you're looking at. So I want you to imagine that this piece that you're looking at is about 2.5 meters long. He uses really fine liner pens, 0.03, some of them millimeters thick, tiny little whisker of a pen, to draw these really surreal, imaginative drawings. And he has something really important to say about what's going on the planet, and he does it in such a beautiful way by using his imagination to imagine that these animals are living planets in themselves. For those of you who've seen his work in real life at Art and, you'll know that he often encourages people to look at his work through a magnifying glass because the detail is really incredible.
Hello and welcome to my half of the video. And first up we've got artist Pam Smallshaw. Pam was one of our Raw Talent artists from 2020, and you can see by the images here that she is an artist who absolutely specialises in abstract expressive landscapes. Now, she creates her work by actively going out into the landscape that surrounds where she lives and sketching and drawing from real life, and then taking these sketches back to the studio and really exploring the process of colour, shape, values and line to create these really vibrant abstract landscapes. Her work is really intuitive and gestural, and she's just got a real emotional response to the landscape that she loves. Our next artist is Paul Brown. So Paul is a painter who creates these absolutely atmospheric, expressive paintings, and you can really see that he is so inspired by the landscape that surrounds him. It's very northern, very rural, with lots of industry going on in them. And if you live up north like we do in the Pennines, you will absolutely recognise these scenes as sort of our everyday scenes that surround us. His use of colour is just absolutely beautiful, really subtle, and he's just got a real way of capturing the feel of the empty and barren landscapes. Next up, we've got another painter, Paula Dunn. Paula is a landscape painter, and her work really ranges in scale. She creates quite small works which are on paper, and then she goes up to these really large scale stretched canvases which, you know, can have a real impact to any room that they're in. She paints in response to the environment that she goes walking in and exploring wherever she lives, and you can really see that her work is just massively influenced by the weather patterns and the changing landscapes that she comes across. She paints in a way where she's inspired by her feelings and the memories that she has of these places. And you can really see that these natural forces are really evocative in these paintings. Really beautiful work. Our next artist is Philip Barraclough. So Philip was one of our Raw Talent artists from 2020, and you can see from his work here that he creates these extremely intricate layered studies, these sketches and drawings where he uses pencil and charcoal and graphite and pen and ink as well to give these studies of woodland, of roots, of branches entwining and tangled together. He's really inspired by the natural world and especially the woodlands and the uplands of northern England where he lives. And he says himself that the world is full of complexity and he tries to reflect this in his art, which is just perfectly sums up his work here. Up next we've got Print Garage. So Ian Perry of Print Garage creates these beautifully, deeply layered, highly colour saturated screen prints. What I love about Ian's work and the way that he describes how he works is that he would say that he borrows language from other art forms. And I think you can really see here that he's just so inspired by music and mixing things together and poetry and photography, and all these elements come together in these amazingly detailed screen prints where he layers up all these beautiful textures and shapes, and there is a real musical poetry to his work, and the vibrancy of the colour as well is just stunning. And last but not least, we have Rachel Brown. So Rachel is a jeweller who she creates these really wearable pieces, and you can see here that each piece of jewellery has an enamel element to it. Now, unlike other enamel artists where you traditionally see very bold, colourful work, Rachel's chosen to strip back the colour and focus purely on white enamel. And this set against the oxidised sort of black metalwork, this is just so striking. She really focuses on her mark making and exploring repetitive patterns, and you can really just the love of line and texture is just so evident in all of her pieces. So that's it, that's the end of our first video for today. Join us at 1 p.m. when we'll be back with another video featuring another 12 fantastic artists, designers and makers. And until then, browse on our website and have a look in our stories and on our grid, and you'll be able to engage and interact with all of our amazing artists that have been taking part over the last 3 days. See you at 1. Bye.